All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of the Dynasty Fantasy Football League podcast. Today, I will have Nick on with me, and we're going to do a little review of the draft, talk about what everyone did, how we think they did. So,
Hello, hello. Excited to be the first guest. Episode 1.
episode 1. We'll see how this goes. All right, so kick things off. Andy, the lucky son of a bitch that he is, with pick number 1 for the second year in a
Second
row.
year in a row.
Once again, gets a stud running back this year, Bijan Robinson, the most obvious pick of the draft.
Yes.
There's really no explanation for this. There's no. The only question anybody had was he going to trade it to somebody?
A
And
lot I've tried, nobody succeeded.
typical for Andy. So now here's where I'll kind of let you take the lead on round 1 because you seem to have the most insight in into what was going on with some of these picks.
Yeah, I started round 1 with pick 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. And just looking at how I did a lot of research into mock drafts. Basically, I only had to look at the first round, which is usually what a lot of the um, draft analysts do. Is they only they only do like round 1, round 2 of rookie drafts. So I was lucky enough to be able to just see the progression of who they picked, and I mean the consensus typically was, you know, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigbo as a top wide receiver. Gibbs, Bijan was RB1, Gibbs was RB2, and then the QBs were. It started off with Young as 1, and then like Richardson and Stroud were kind of like 2A, 2B, and as things progressed, it kind of became more Richardson 1, and then Young 2, and Stroud 3. Um, and Dennis, he just approached me one day and said, "Hey, I want that 2 pick," and kept offering more and more for it until it finally became too much that I had to give it up. So he ended up getting that Richardson, which I mean he has a super high ceiling, but at the same
Right.
time he's a lower floor just because he's less uh, polished than the rest. But I
The
mean,
ultimate upside pick, right?
yeah,
So
for
and I
sure.
know there was a lot of back and forth before the draft that everyone, we couldn't figure out if Dennis was going to go with Richardson or if he was going with Jameer Gibbs.
Yeah,
I'll just
he
say this, Dennis. If you had gone Jameer Gibbs, I would have roasted the crap out of you just because you don't trade all that up for a running back. You'd better have
yeah.
taken a quarterback.
It was funny because during negotiations, I was like, well, like who do you think you want? And he was like, well, it's between, Gibbs or Young. Um, I think at the time, Young was the QB1. And then after the trade went through, I go, okay, now seriously, who are you gonna pick? He was straight for sure Gibbs. And he wanted Gibbs. And then kind of came to his senses and realized, that QB is going to be the better option for him, which I agree. Um, yeah, I said with all the upside for that, especially with this being a super flex dynasty, it made sense for him to go QB1 off the board right there.
Yeah. All right. So pick 3. Matt then took Jameer Gibbs. He felt he was comfortable with his quarterbacks and wanted a running back. I can't fault him. Gibbs
Mm,
top 15 pick in the NFL draft, which for running backs is crazy. So he's got
yeah,
huge upside and could be
yeah.
a
I
stud from
mean,
year one.
I think talking to Matt too, it was one of those he wanted a QB, but when things fall into your lap, you kind of just have to take it as they come, especially with the first round draft. So yeah,
Yeah.
can't fault them for picking Gibbs there.
All right, so now we get into the Nick block here, where you ended up after getting Dennis's pick and your other picks, you ended up with picks 4 through 7. So we
Yeah.
can let you talk your thought process on what you did here.
Yeah, going into it, with 5 first picks to begin with, my thought was I needed 2 quarterbacks.
I
Just
mean, I
because
completely agree with that statement because
I had none. Well, I mean, I had Mac Jones, who's coming off a poor year, basically because he had Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator, and then I had Ritter as a rookie, and then Baker, who is probably going to get beat up by Trask to start the season. So, I mean, I definitely needed two QBs to build upon, so I wanted to get those done right away, and I just took the first two, or just the next two that were available, which is Young and Stroud, which dating back to like my first mock drafts, those were the ones I was getting at picks 2 and 4 to begin with,
right,
with those Young and Stroud. So I was happy that I was still getting them. Um, and then it goes into the player positions, or the position players, and I had to go with JSN, even though he went into a less desirable or less favorable situation with Seattle. A lot of people still had him as wide receiver one. Quentin Johnson was up there as well, just because of where he went, and with Keenan Allen hopefully retiring soon. I mean, he could play a couple more years, but with him retiring, Quentin Johnson definitely can just step into there right away. I just had this feeling that, like, from when he first came out, I thought he was going to be a bust, and I didn't like him. So I tried to do the best I could to not take Quentin Johnson, even though he probably will prove me wrong and be a stud. So I went with Jackson Smith and Jigma.
I mean, I even threw a couple random trades up to 106, just hoping that you'd say yes, so I could snag JSN because I had said when I saw him playing college, like this guy's gonna be a stud. Like I think
Yeah,
he could be the best slot receiver in the NFL as soon as his second or third season. So it's one of those.
yeah,
I think he's a no doubt pick at number 6.
he was playing alongside Olave and Garrett Wilson, and he was still getting a large target share and
Yeah,
still dominating. Which I have Olave on my team, so you guys gotta recreate that OSU magic. So yeah, then going back to my block of picks, I definitely needed another running back, and because Robinson and Gibbs were off the board, it kind of went down a tier, in my opinion, and it was between Shane Miller and Charbonnet, and I'm not a huge fan of Charbonnet just because I have Walker
yeah.
and did not want them to be in that battle of like, who do I not play each week. Um, and so yeah, I went with speed, the old Oakland Raiders motto of speed over anything else.
Al Davis, you got yourself a fast player.
Yeah. I mean, he's in a desirable spot. Miami, their whole team is just the whole scheme is just built on speeding
Right.
and getting to the edge. And Mostert's there, but he's also often injured.
And he's
And he,
31.
yeah. So I mean, unless Dalvin Cook ends up going there, who knows? But even him, even him, he's 27, almost 28. So I feel like down the line he could, Shane can just take over.
I
And
will admit, despite the fact that I told you otherwise, I never was taking Devon A. Chain at 109. Um,
darn,
I just wanted either Quentin Johnston or Jordan Addison to fall to me,
that's fine.
and that's what ended up happening.
I mean, I needed a
I know
running
you
back,
needed
and
a running back. Yeah,
I was gonna take one regardless. I mean, I could have taken a tight end there, but
yeah,
chose to believe the smoke.
yeah. So yeah, next trio of picks where I felt like this was the tier 2 of wide receivers. So I had JSN as his own tier, and then
Hmm.
a tier of Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, say Flowers that got selected. Tony had traded into your 8th pick that you originally had and took Quentin Johnston. Like you talked about Quentin Johnson a little bit. Yeah, I feel like he's high upside, but he's in an offense with a lot of good targets, and who knows what he will end up doing.
Right.
And then Jordan Addison went next, and I was very happy to take Jordan Addison. And then I got a trade offer from Jesse that made me say, "Okay, I don't think I can turn this down." I moved back, I think 8 or 9 picks, um, and then gave him a third round pick, which I wanted to get rid of that third round pick anyways because I didn't have room for it on my roster, and picked up a first round pick next year where I feel like the first round could be stronger than this year because I don't really, I like these players, but I don't think that this first round was overwhelmingly great outside of the top six. I think there was, after that, it's kind of a lot of question marks on everybody.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of
So
just
I,
tears down after that.
so I felt, picking up that extra first round pick next year would be beneficial. And we all know Jesse has a zillion of those, so he probably throwing them around like candy.
It's not really picking up, just more like recouping a
Yeah,
first
that's
round
true.
pick.
So, but yeah, when I read it through, it turned out to be, yeah, if you take the years out, it's Jesse gave me a first, a second, and a third for a first and a third, which I thought was a no brainer.
Yeah.
So even though I liked the player in Jordan Addison, I felt the value there was too much to pass up. And then, so didn't you? So you had 10 and Colin traded up. Was that? I can't remember what happened at the 10th pick. Colin, I know Colin did move
Yeah.
up into that spot.
Yep. Yeah. So me and Colin swapped 10 to 12.
Okay.
And I think it was like a third, it's a third or a fourth round. It might have been a fourth round
Yeah.
pick, just to move up. And at that point, I didn't want another wide receiver because I have a
Yeah.
ton of young
Yeah.
ones, and yeah, Zay Flowers is the best one there.
Yeah.
And I think he wanted to jump um,
Who I don't remember. Was it
Andy.
Andy? Andy was at
Yeah,
11. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he thought Andy may have wanted Flowers or Andy may have wanted um, Charbonnet there, and he wanted to jump him. And I mean, I didn't want either, so
Yeah.
so I was happy to take a fourth.
Right.
Um, and which I ended up just sending right back to
Because
move
then
up
you
from
because you
12
moved up
to
12 to
11.
11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. To take Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, needed a tight end.
I mean, I
Um,
think Kincaid definitely has a lot of upside. Um, he boom bust, but I feel like every tight end's like that. They could all be great, but who
right.
knows? Athletic and great receiver.
Yeah, I honestly I think any one of the top three between Kincaid, Laporte, and Mayer, I think will all have nice upside. It's all gonna just depend on the schemes that they fit into. And I think they're saying like Mayer was he was more of a two-way player, more gonna be in line blocking, which can take away, some of his energy for routes and some of the, he can be on the field for more plays, but he may just be blocking a lot more in his first couple of years. So well, with Kincaid, yeah, this is the upside, even though there's Knox there. Knox was probably gonna be more of a blocking tight end, and
Right.
and Kincaid's gonna be more of like a slot receiver, just a
Yeah.
bigger one.
And then pick 12, we had another trade up. Andy was just kept trading back from
Yeah,
11 to 12 to 14. And Dave just wanted to make, I know I asked Dave about this, and he liked Kendra Miller and really wanted Kendra Miller. So he decided he wanted to move up because Dave wants to win a championship this year, thinks that if Alvin Kamara can get suspended, Kendra Miller could be a stud. And I kind of agree with him.
I agree. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so he kind of just decided that was who he wanted. He needed a running back and thought that was, of the guys available, that's who he wanted. Um, then Andy back to back. So we get to the second round now. I mean, overall, first round, there weren't too many surprises, I didn't think. If I had to say a reach the most, I would say your pick of A Chain, but
Oh, I
obviously
agree.
you've kind of
Yeah,
put your explanation of, the getting the position rather than the player in that spot, which
yeah.
makes sense. Other than that, I feel like it was pretty close to what I've seen consensus wise. Is maybe a spot or two up or down based on preference and things like
And,
that. But
when you have 5 first round picks, yeah, you're bound to have a reach or two. Same thing happened to me last year. So, you know, I'm
yeah,
okay with what I got.
yeah. So I don't want to go into as much detail in the later rounds here. So second round, Andy started off. Now he had 201, and then it traded back those couple spots to 202. He takes Zach Charbonnet, which he is in a position where he can just take best player available. He doesn't really have needs of any kind, so he can just sit there and take who he wants and just keep increasing the value of his team. He's pretty much loaded at every position, which is an envious position for the rest of us. So he takes
Yes.
Charbonnet and Will Levis, who, in probably some of those early mock drafts you saw, Will Levis might have been drafted in the top five, but that clearly didn't happen. And so I think, it's interesting value here in the second round now. I had 203, and had Levis been there, I would have considered taking a shot on him. So I definitely understand the process behind Andy's pick. Now he's got like five quarterbacks that are at least, have a shot at getting starting snaps this year. But so 203 was my first pick that I actually made. I moved up from 207 to get this pick earlier in the week.
I wonder why.
Because as we talked about, I had picks and didn't have roster spots. So my process here, I actually, on my board of players, my personal rankings, I did have Sam Laporta ahead of Mingo, who I took. I took Mingo before Laporta. I had 203 and 205, but I knew you were between my two picks and had already taken Kincaid. So I'm like, I don't think Nick's taking two tight ends here. I just
I also
don't see it
told you I was
happening.
taking Mingo at 2-4, and you're like, "Oh, really?" And then you moved up from 2-7 to 2-3, and I was like, "I wonder who Andrew's gonna take."
Honestly, that I didn't want. Honestly, I would have. I much would have preferred to try and get Kendry Miller there than Jonathan
Yeah,
Mingo. That's who I really wanted to
right.
move up for. I was hoping for one of those, but no, Mingo was a nice consolation prize. I'll call him that.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him just to pair with Bryce
To
Young.
stack, yeah.
Yeah, to stack them up. But
I mean,
I
he's.
once you moved up, I knew you're probably gonna take him because Miller was probably gonna be gone. So
I mean, I
okay,
wasn't necessarily gonna. It wasn't for a specific player. Like I said, it was. I
yeah,
thought that there was a tier
the
break.
tier.
I thought there was a tier break right around 205, 206. So I said I wanted to get up from 7 to 3 and just hope that I could do something with that. So your next pick is Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, I got triple down on QBs. Like you said, I already had a tight end. I think Laporta was the only person I had left in that tier, and I didn't want to reach for another running back at that point. And to me, the receivers that were there were good, but at the same time, like I said, I already you can only play what's the maximum of five wide receivers, and I have like six or seven
Yeah.
that are either sophomores or third year wide receivers. So I didn't really want to add another one. So I figured might as well just try to triple down on QB and see if that ever pays off.
Right. Yeah, because he's definitely one that's a project to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean golf, he could ball out, and Hooker can just be a backup for
Right.
for 3 years.
So then I was up again, and we went back to back Lions here, and I took
Yeah,
Sam Laporta, who we talked about tight ends. Michael Mayer went at 208, so we talked about those guys, and I prefer Laporta to Mayer, as you said. Mayer might block more than, whereas I feel like Laporta could just step right in and be, um, when Jameson Williams that the number two option potentially, but he showed a lot of receiving chops at Iowa, and so we'll see what happens there. I didn't really need a tight end, but I didn't really like the other players available, so I said I'll go with Laporta and hope that he can pan out into something good. So we had kind of a little receiver run here as Dennis used one of his other picks
stacked it.
to stack Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's smart with him.
yeah, Yeah, he's another upside guy that who knows what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And then Matt made his next pick and took Rasheed Rice. That was a player I actually, when I had the 207, I was looking at taking him. So I thought that was good value. Chiefs receiver drafted in the second round. They have a zillion receivers, but none of them have really been amazing.
Right.
So
Yeah,
with Travis
definitely
Kelsey and
yeah, there's the ability for him to move into a starting role. So yeah, good value.
then we've got, so as we talked about Michael Mayer already. So Doyle went back to back Michael Mayer and Jaden Reed. Um, Reed went to the Packers, and kind of a surprise that he got taken as high as he did, but a second round wide receiver here, getting into the late end of the second of a rookie draft is probably pretty good value for him.
Hmm.
Um, Chase Brown, you took Chase Brown, so talk.
Yeah, I did. It's between him and Roshan Johnson, and in my eyes, I think Roshan Johnson's a better player. But Chase Brown, because of Mixon's legal trouble, and there's not really. I mean, Chris Evans is really the only other person that's could put up a fight for starting.
Hey,
Might as
don't,
well.
don't rag on my Michigan running backs.
I decided. I said, hey, I took the chance that you know I could have reached again, but he may have a starting role here soon. So we'll see.
All right, and then Matt wrapped up the second round taking Jalen Hyatt and Roshan Johnson. You talked about Roshan there. He was with Chicago. I honestly, the backfield could be a mess, or any of them could step up and be awesome this year.
Hmm.
Obviously, I'm hoping it's Khalil Herbert because he's looked good. But Roshan Johnson was a guy I liked as a prospect, so I think he's got a shot at really carving out a role there. And then Jalen Hyatt, same thing. Like the Giants have a zillion receivers, but none of them are really good, and none of them have really, you know,
Right.
they're not paying any of them anything. So it's like
Right. Yeah. So I
Hyatt,
mean,
even though
definitely
he's
home run
definitely could
threat.
come in and I heard somebody describe him as he basically is a replica of Darius Slayton, except he actually can catch the ball. So Darius Slayton gets wide open and then just drops it. So,
Yeah. Well, and Matt has Danny Dimes too, so it's
oh yeah,
good for
so
him
that,
to stack
yeah,
that.
another stack. All right, so now third round. This is where I was trying to, even though I didn't have roster space, this is where I was actually aggressively trying to trade into one of these first four picks in the third round because I was really targeting trying to get either Tank Bigsby or Tajay Spears. I liked both of them. Colin, I think Colin traded in to get Tank Bigsby at 301. Um, and then Ben took Luke Musgrave. Welcome to the draft, Ben. That was the only notable for Ben. That's the
Uh,
only actual rookie he drafted. Everyone else that he drafted were veterans. So just an interesting tidbit. Any other picks here in the third round that you want to highlight here?
no, yeah, I mean it's like you said, Ben got Hodgins a little bit later as another
Giants
receiver who,
receiver. Yeah.
yeah, who came up at the end of the year last year, and yeah, could definitely do some damage this year. Um, I picked up Evan Hall at 3.9. Hopefully, can fill that Naheem Hines role in Indy.
Yeah, he
Because that's basically
definitely
what he did in Northwestern. He just caught the
caught a
ball.
ton of passes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Doyle was probably psyched thinking that it was this time last year and getting Kayshawn Booty at 311, not realizing that the fall of that guy just crazy. This guy was up
Yeah.
there with JSN is going to be the first receiver taken and barely
Is
gets
he from
drafted in the NFL
LSU?
draft. Yeah, and
Yeah.
just a complete head case. And his freshman year, he's just a complete monster on the field. So who knows? Maybe getting with New England, they'll get his head on straight and he can figure stuff out. The other pick I liked in the third round was Matt took Wilson on the
Hmm.
Cardinals. I feel like all their receivers on the Cardinals, like Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, and Dortch, they're all like tiny. They're all really
Yeah.
small. And then they draft Michael Wilson, who is like 6'3", big body. So like I feel like he's one that um, he was a high recruit and stuff. And Stanford, he was just constantly hurt. So if he can stay healthy, he is one that maybe could do something. All right, fourth and fifth round, everyone's just throwing darts here. It's the same thing. Do you see anybody that you like that people took?
So I did like Tucker at 4-4. And it's funny because what Colin took Tucker, and then I don't pronounce it. Was it Nakuya? At
Puka
four
Nakua?
five, Nakua. Yeah,
Puka Nakua?
yeah. And then Jesse immediately traded for both of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was funny because I know Jesse was saying he was trying to target those and then couldn't move up and then ended up getting those.
Yeah, one pick I saw in the seventh or in the fourth round was again at the seventh pick in the round. I liked Nick Stoll took Luke
Mm.
Schoonmaker, who
So you're a Michigan guy?
well, it's more of a Cowboys thing. They don't have
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz anymore. There's just a huge
Jake
uh
Ferguson. Wow.
yeah, void of targets there. And they drafted him in the second round, so clearly they like him. And so I thought him sliding that far was interesting because, like as I said, I at one point had picks in the middle of the third round,
Yeah.
and when I thought I was to have those picks, if I hadn't taken like Laporta or somebody in the second, I was definitely looking to target Schoonmaker there in the middle of the third. So it was interesting to me seeing how far he ended up dropping. I feel it's probably just because people don't feel like they need extra tight ends, but
Yeah. I
and same
did
thing
like
with oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say that I did like Andy's pick at 4-1 too with Tank Dell. I think it's a nice little sleeper there that he could be very well from
Oh,
everything I'm hearing out of the Houston's camp for like the mini camps and all the rookie camps that he's come on strong.
but isn't he tiny too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 5'6" or something.
Yes. But yeah, I heard a little tidbit because obviously I was looking at all the things for Stroud at Houston, and
Yeah.
apparently during the draft, after Houston drafted Stroud, they wanted his input on what receivers to get, and they mentioned Tank Dell to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, go get him." So like,
Mm,
he helped recruit Tank Dell to Houston. I guess not really recruit him, but yeah, helps Houston draft him.
right. I mean, other than that, I don't really see anybody else I wanted to talk about. It's just a lot of late round flyers. Some of these guys could be good. They're probably all going to get cut in 2 years. So
Yeah.
one or two of them will pop and do something. But so overall, who do you think did well, didn't do as well in the draft?
Um, so like I mean, you mentioned it. That sometimes like Ben just had a lot of late round picks, and it's tough when you don't have any early round picks to say, oh, somebody didn't do well because the name recognition isn't there. I
Right.
think he got some good value with his later round picks, especially because he's somebody who has a roster who can compete. Or he's just going to get those. He just needs those secondary players to put up random numbers each week. So I mean, I think he did okay, but I think Ben may have been a person who had a lower end draft, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's easy to pile on the people that don't have 4 first round picks. So their draft just doesn't look as good because they're picking late.
Right. What about you? Anybody you saw that draft didn't really stack up?